Calvin and Knox condemned anything that might distract us from glorifying God, so music, art, and anything decorative was outlawed. Scotland was stripped bare of all idolatry. Anything over the top was the devil's work. So where does that leave Scottish exhibitionists?
KLF is gonna rock ya.
Bill Drummond first found success with his band KLF, who refused to take themselves too seriously, despite the pretensions of the music industry. The band was hugely popular, but Bill and his partner turned their backs on the music business and destroyed their back catalogue. They also notoriously burnt £1 million, but did so discreetly. Calvin would surely have approved.
When I used to perform, when I was in a band on stage, it didn't seem right. I remember getting to the dressing room after every show, and I'd find myself curled up like that, down on the floor, just thinking, what was that about? What are we doing? And I've never been interested. I mean, you're going to think this is stupid me saying it. Here I am on television talking to people, but in having me as a personality, me as a recognisable face, it was never particularly that. It was always the work that I was wanting to put forward.
Bill is returning to Dumfries and Galloway to revisit his childhood haunts.
I remember my father wrote a book of poems in the war, during the war, and it was published as a soldier in Africa. He didn't even put his name to it. He considered. I remember asking him about this. He says, "No, that would be not right. You know, wanting to, you know, my experience as a soldier in Africa was no different to anybody else's. So I wasn't seeking any whatever for doing this." And I can never quite get my head around it. I mean, I understand it more now. That wouldn't have been the right thing to aspire to be showy in any way.
This landscape is steeped in the history of Scotland's Calvinist past. As a schoolboy, Bill would hear stories of Protestant martyrs who would rather drown than swear allegiance to the kings and bishops of England.
This is the Bladnoch River. It's flowing into the Wigton Bay here. We're at the old harbour in Wigton. It's high tide just now. And when the low tide is out, you get these great expanses of sands, quicksands. When I was a kid, we were all really scared of going out in the quicksands, and we'd hear about children that had got lost out there and drowned out there. But the main thing that held our imagination was the story of Margaret Wilson, who'd been tied to a stake out here in the Wigton Bay at low tide, and for the tide to come in and to kill a form of capital punishment.
The story of Margaret Wilson's death troubled Bill and his friends. But the pre-Raphaelite painting which immortalised her worried them even more. Millet's portrait of this godly woman was everything they'd been brought up to distrust in Calvinist Scotland.
I mean, I was surprised that our teacher had a print of it up at the school, because all that auburn rolling down hair, all that kind of that pre-Raphaelite stuff was just so against what we knew to be right.
Bill grew up in Newton Stewart, where his father was the Church of Scotland minister.
Growing up in the manse, you know, I learnt the political structure of the Presbyterian Church was that it was from the people up. The people elected the minister. John Knox was a hero. You know, he stood up to the king, he stood up to London, he stood up to the powers above that were telling us how we should behave. Now we're off to Murray's Monument, which will be the last stop on my tour of local Calvinism.
Alexander Murray was a Presbyterian success story. Taught to read by his father using the Bible, he became an influential scholar and an example to young boys that life was not to be wasted.
We could achieve what he achieved. You know, if he could do it, we could do it. All you had to do was work hard. And that stood for something. I mean, it somehow embedded itself into my head and into the heads of the other lads and the girls in my class. And that stays. It doesn't go.
There's that cliche about the Jesuits, you know, give me the boy until he's 7 and we'll show you the man. Well, it seems like Calvin had me until I was 11. But I guess he's got me for the rest of my life, and there's nothing I can do about it.